Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to be kind of correcting what Embark have said here. So this video you're going to be watching in the background was uploaded to Embark's official YouTube channel, and it basically just goes through what they think the best loadout for a new player to the game is. So they're saying the XP54 is the best weapon to use, the cloaking device is the best specialization to use, and then gateway, breach charge, and the pyro grenade are going to be the best gadgets to use for a new player to the game. It's basically what they think a new player should go and unlock first and play with when they launch the game for like the very first time. And I think a lot of things here are just not true. I actually think pretty much everything is kind of just wrong. So I'm going to be kind of correcting whatever I think is wrong here, which is everything, and explaining why. So this is what Embark have put as their, best things to use for a new player. Cloaking device, XP, 54, gateway, breach charge, and the pyro grenade. Now, I'm going to go in-game, and I'm going to explain why that isn't the case. So, the cloaking device has a few layers to it that makes it feel pretty bad to use if you don't know what you're doing. The first layer is that it's only visible at certain ranges. So I think it's if you're like 10 meters beside someone, maybe it's a little bit further, you suddenly become a little bit more visible than beyond that range. So sometimes you're like very invisible if you're far enough away, and then sometimes you're only kind of invisible if you're close. So that's one mechanic that's going to be kind of confusing new players to the game. They're not going to understand why they get hit with the sledgehammer person at point blank range. They're not going to know why the sledgehammer person reacted to them and then just hit them with the sledgehammer and one-shot them and then sent them back to the lobby multiple times because they kept dying to that and they didn't know why. So that's the first thing. The first thing is like it's very visible when you're at the closer ranges, and I feel like a new player just isn't going to know that, and I feel like that's going to lead to some pretty annoying deaths, I would say. The second thing is like the audio it makes. Like when you turn it on, so let's say you're hiding underneath the stairway and you hear someone coming down the stairway. If you use this, I don't think a new player is going to know that the enemies can hear that sound. So if you go invisible while the enemies are coming down the stairway, they're going to look underneath the stairway, and it's probably just gonna be the death of you. It's probably just gonna get you killed. So that's another thing. So both the visuals and the audio just kind of inherently makes this a little bit awkward for a new player to use. But on top of all of that, then we have kind of, the actual stuff, the meat of the sandwich, which is that it's just really hard to use this without getting killed unless you have absolutely incredible positioning, or unless you know where like absolutely everyone in the game is, so that you can position yourself well. Because if you're caught in a bad position with this thing, you can't reposition, and you're probably just gonna die because you're light and you're very squishy. Now, I do think that's why the devs had the gateway on here. Actually, you know what? Why don't I put on everything the devs had on? So gateway, pyro, then they had the breach charge, and then they had the cloaking device and the XP54, which I can't see because it is here. Okay, so the cloaking device, you have to position yourself really well with it, because otherwise you're just going to get taken out and you can't reposition. You can reposition with the gateway, however you can only use that once, and then once you use it, it's like done. And I guess I'll just go into the gateway now while I'm talking about it. The gateway is another very, 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 very confusing thing for new players. First thing that's weird with it is that it disappears after 70 meters, so if you throw the first part and then you run more than 70 meters away, the first part of it just disappears and then you can't use it again, and a new player is not going to understand that it has a 70-meter range on it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, a new player is not going to know that you can throw stuff through it. So, if they think they're safe on one side of it and then someone throws a frag grenade in, they're not going to understand why they blew up. And then similarly, they're also not going to know that they can use it to like transfer a vault from point A to point B pretty quickly, which can help them win the game, but they're probably just not going to know that they can do that, which I think might get them, make their teammates a little bit angry at them, because maybe they could have done something with the gateway, but they didn't because they didn't know that they could. So I think their teammates would probably say something a little bit mean in the chat, because that tends to happen with online gaming these days. So I feel like the gateway is just going to be a little bit confusing for a new player to use as well. Sometimes it's just going to disappear on them. They're not going to know why. It also just has a timer on it, so if you throw one part and you don't throw the other part for a certain amount of time, I don't actually know how long it is, then it just disappears, and the new player isn't going to know why that happens either. So like, yes, you can use the gateway to reposition if you have the cloaking device on, or you can just put evasive dash on. You know how confusing evasive dash is? You press Q and you go forwards in that direction, and that's all there is to it. So much, much, much simpler for a newer player, much easier to reposition for a newer player, and just, you know, if you want to back out from a fight or quickly go rest a teammate, it's going to be much easier and much safer to do it with this evasive dash. And if you really want to, you can argue that, like, yeah, you're going to get killed around corners sometimes because everything in the finals is server side, but you're also going to get killed around corners with the cloaking device because that's just because of the movement, nothing to do with the specialization itself. So the evasive dash is just going to be much easier and much more straightforward for a new player, while also just being better. Chances are, if you're a new player, you're not going to be great at the game, which is fine, but unless you're really good at the game, the cloaking device is just going to suck. But if you're, like, new at the game and you suck yourself, the evasive dash is going to give you a much more of a fighting chance, I would say. So that's the evasive, that's the cloaking device and the gateway talked about, and why I don't think that they, you know, make sense to be on this list. Instead of the cloaking device, I would go with the evasive dash, and instead of the gateway, I would go with probably like sonar grenades, so that you can see where enemies are before you go dashing into an area, let's say. Sonar grenades are very, very useful. Instead of, you know, having a 70-meter range on it and having a cooldown on it, you know, if you leave one spot there for too long, and having a timer on it for, if you throw both of them, that's going to disappear in a few seconds anyway. Instead of all of that stuff like the gateway, you just throw it, and it pings someone 3 times, and that's all it does. You aim where you want to throw it, you throw it, and it pings people, and you have 2 of them, and that's all there is to it. It's very, very straightforward, very easy to use, and very, very good. So I don't know why this wasn't on their list instead of the gateway, but here we are, and that's why I'm making this video. So then for the weapon, the XP54 just isn't the best pick ever. And in the video, I think they say something like powerful but forgiving, or something like that. They also boast it's got a high fire rate and a high mag size. Guess whose mag size is bigger? It's the M11. And guess whose fire rate is faster? It is also the M11. You guessed it right. So I don't know why the XP54 was there instead of the M11, but right now the M11 is just a better weapon. If you're a light, most of your fights are going to be taking it the close to medium ranges, and if you're playing the objective, that's also where most of the fights are going to be taking place, and in those ranges, the M11 is just going to be better. The thing with the XP54 is that it doesn't excel at any range, it's just kind of okay at everything, whereas the M11 is very, very good at point blank to even the, I don't know, like the closer ranges, let's say, but it also does completely fine at the medium to longer ranges too. It does have a little bit more recoil on it, but new players also kind of like hip firing a lot, because in games like Apex or Overwatch 2, hip firing is just a lot more common. And that's kind of the same with various other FPS games as well. And the M11 has much, much better hipfire on it than the XP54. All of the bullets stay very central for at least the first few, like, 10 meters or so, I would say. So, better fire rate, larger mag size, and therefore more forgiving. Just better at the closer ranges, and also the hipfire is better. And that all leads me to say the M11 is going to be a better weapon than the XP54, and also just a better weapon for the newer players to go ahead and unlock instead of the XP54. So I would go with that. I wouldn't really go with anything else, because it's either like burst or semi-auto, or really, really hard to make the best out of. So XP or M11 were pretty much the only 2 choices, and I can understand why they went with the XP54. It's because it has like a much easier recoil pattern. But I feel like people coming from other games are probably going to want to try hip firing a lot. That's kind of what I see a lot of the time when new people play the game. They try hip firing a lot, and that just doesn't really work out so well for them. And also the M11 is just a better weapon, and you probably want new players to have a good time. And also, in the video, they do say, like, oh, powerful but forgiving, and then also, like, large mag size and fast fire rate. And the M11 has a faster fire rate and a larger mag size, so I don't know why this isn't here instead. But, anyway, I've talked enough about that. So then we have the breach charge and the pyro grenade. The breach charge is just a worse version of the tracking dart right now. You've got the very small advantage that you can blow it up wherever you want, but I would wager that if you're a new player and you haven't played around with, you know, so many of the gadgets that much, you might not know that you have to right-click to blow this up. I think that's a genuine thing that a new player might not know to do. Like, if you haven't used C4 in other games, you might not know that you need to right-click with this thing to blow it up, especially if the finals is your first game. So I don't think that this is going to be very beginner-friendly. However, with the breach charge, the thermal bore, rather, you point it, you shoot it, and then whatever you shot at blows up, and that's all there is to it. You have 2 charges, lots of destructive damage, pretty much the same as the thermal bore, but you also have way more range. So it's much simpler, and you have way more range. So with this one, I have absolutely no idea why the breach charge was here instead of the thermal bore. The thermal bore is just so much easier to use. Like with the M11 and with the cloaking device, I can kind of understand where the devs may have been coming from. But putting the breach charge here instead of the thermal bore is just wrong, as far as I'm aware. Like, the thermal bore, you point it, you shoot it, it blows up. With the breach charge, you have to be close to it, thing number 1. Then you have to throw it on, and then you have to press a different button to blow it up. So that's like 3 different things you have to do. With the thermal bore, you point and shoot. That's one thing. Well, 2 thing if you want to, you know, say it's 2 things, I suppose, would make it fair. It's still one less thing, though. Anyway, then we come to the pyro grenade. And the pyro grenade is like the most okay thing on this list. This is the one I'm most okay with because it's decent. However, it's still not a great pick because I don't think a new player is going to know all of the kind of layers there are to the kind of like fire slash gas slash smoke slash goo system. So I don't think a new player is going to know that they're supposed to use the fire grenade to dampen out the gas, and I don't think they'll know they're supposed to use the fire grenade to get rid of the goo or any of that kind of stuff. And for that reason, I feel like frag grenades are just going to be a better pick. You only have 1 pyro grenade, but you have 2 frag grenades. You throw them, they do damage, and you don't have to worry about destroying gas or destroying goo or anything like that. You just throw it and it does damage. So again, I just feel like it's a much simpler weapon to use than a much simpler gadget to use than the pyro grenade would be, and also more forgiving because you have 2 of them. So yeah, so that was just like my version of what I think the best new player light loadout would be. And I don't think this is even the best. I think you could probably get a little bit better here because I don't know how much value the thermal bore has to it. I think the breach charge was just there because the devs want new players to know that the game is destructive and destructible and the arena is you can destroy it and all of that kind of stuff. So I think the breach charge was there just to kind of encourage people to blow stuff up, which looks cool and kind of encourages people to play the game, maybe. So I can understand why breach charge was there, but, you know, something like... Well, actually, you know what? Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay, because pushing into an area is useful. I was going to say putting something on, like, the vanishing bomb, but that's maybe a little bit complicated, too. Because that's just back to the invisibility again. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this. This is a very, very simple loadout. Evasive dash... You aim where you want to go, you press Q, you go that way. Very simple. M11, just a better version of the XP54, really, and better hipfire too. You could argue that, you know, it's going to have recoil patterns at the longer ranges, but I don't think people are going to be like, oh my god, the gun has recoil, because pretty much every FPS to ever exist has some form of recoil in it, so I don't think that's going to be anything new. Also, the XP54 does also have recoil, so it's nothing new there either. Then the thermal bore, just better version of the breach charge, I would say. Don't really know why breach charge was there at all. You can leave the pyro grenade on if you want, but I feel like frag grenades are just going to offer you more bang for your buck because you do have 2 of them. Then sonar grenades, you point where you want to throw them, you throw them, and it pings people in the area so that you and your teammates can figure out where the enemies are. And this is also pretty balanced, so you've got like some destructive capability here with the thermal bore, you've got some offensive capabilities with the frag grenade, and then some like scout capabilities with the sonar grenade, and also fast movement with the evasive dash, and just a decent and a well-rounded weapon. So this is what like the actual new player loadout should be. I feel like if you aim for this, you probably just have a pretty good time. If you're not, you know, super duper mega new, and you kind of know how the invisibility works, the vanishing one would actually just make this like a super duper mega decent loadout. Obviously, you do want to have the stun gun on whenever you're playing light, but I would agree that that's probably not the simplest thing to understand ever, because, you know, you stun someone, you think it might be a free kill, but then they turn around and RPG you and then finish you off with their Lewis gun. It's probably not going to feel great, right? So I feel like, you know, gonna try and keep it simple. I do think the stun gun is obviously meta for the light, but not for a new player. So there you go. I think I'm gonna leave that there. It was very interesting to see Embark make that video for the light. I can understand some points from where they came from, but like some of them just also seemed a little bit just wrong to me, like unarguably or inarguably incorrect. Like the breach charge. Like, why, in what world is the breach charge better than the tracking dart for a new player? That's one thing I just don't understand. And then again, I feel like evasive dash is going to be a lot simpler than the cloaking device. M11 is just a lot better than the XP54, which would lead the new players to having a better time. And, you know, again, they say fast fire rate and large mag size for the XP54. M11 has a faster fire rate and a larger mag size, so I genuinely don't know where that was there. Frag grenades, you know, you can leave the pyro grenades on if you want, but these are much more straightforward because you don't have to learn what the grenade actually does, and also you do have 2 of them. And stun grenades, you throw it and it pings people. So that's what I think should have been there. I don't really know what Embark was doing with that video. I don't know who was cooking that one up. But yeah, this is my version anyway of what I think. Like just a very, very decent loadout for a new coming light to the game would be. The best piece of advice you would get as a new player is to not play light, because you're just gonna die a whole lot of times, because light's a really bad class unless you're very good at the game. So the best advice you'll hear if you're a new player watching this video, don't play light, just play medium or heavy. If you're playing quick crash and you just want to have fun and all that kind of stuff, do absolutely whatever you want, have fun. But if you're trying to play, you know, ranked, or if you want to win games quickly in World Tour, just don't play light. You're gonna have a much better time with something else. But, you know, if you do want to play light, if you want to just play casually, want to have fun, even in World Tour, if you want to just have fun and play light, then this is what I think would be a good loadout for a new player. So there you go. Kind of a rant video. A little bit surprised by Embark's decisions there. I don't think they were the best. And I think some of those are pretty hard to argue against as well. But hey, there we go. I guess they're too busy, you know, cooking up the next patches and keeping the game fun, exciting with the Halloween events and all of that stuff to, you know, put crazy amounts of time into their game, which is completely fair. And hey, that's why I'm here. I'm here to, you know, make content for the game and offer my opinions on things that Embark does. So, yeah, there you go. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.